Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now today we're going to be talking about SUI to see kind of what is potentially going on there. We've seen SUI actually crash really hard, kind of breaking, I think, a little bit outside of all expectations for what a lot of people were thinking from SUI, just based on kind of how we'd seen the chart play out, at least so far. So I want to talk a little bit about that, discuss, what could we be seeing? Is SUI dead? Are we maybe going to see it make a comeback? What is going on here? And so I've got a lot of really interesting information that I think you should see here, just to kind of take a look of how this kind of impacts SUI overall. So anyway, let's go ahead. We'll dive right in, starting out with crypto bubbles. We can see SUI actually up a decent bit on the day, but the overall market pretty mixed. And I think this is still pretty easy to see in the crypto market, because if we look at the weekly, still very red. We have a couple greens here and there, but overall the crypto market is still down pretty bad. And if we look at the charts, obviously since we're talking about SUI, we'll look at SUI specifically, but if we look at the charts, it's pretty fair to see that, right? I mean, obviously a decent way off of recent highs, or all-time highs in this case for SUI. Even Bitcoin's holding up kind of better than the rest of the market, I think, kind of for somewhat obvious reasons, but the rest of the market down pretty decent. We could see this trend break here, and so the fact that we've seen this bleed so hard, maybe not necessarily a surprise, just because we did see the trend break here. But what we did see is, I figured we'd probably come back down into this liquidity zone, maybe bounce around a little bit and then see a pullback, or a kind of a reversal back from there. We had seen kind of, some consolidate, or some wicks up here at the top, meaning that kind of volume and momentum to the upside was definitely kind of slowing out a little bit. So when we saw this, I figured, and usually it's good to see a little bit of a consolidation, and maybe even a little bit of a retrace to go test back some supports and see what we can find. Now, obviously, we tested back this support, which I think was a little bit surprising after we broke out of this one. Then we actually even tested this support, which is, I think, even more surprising based on kind of what we were seeing over the past couple of days. And so if we do look from top to bottom, we can see about 55%, pretty close to about 55% down over the past, what is this, month? Let's call it a month. Pretty close overall, I would say. Really crazy move to the downside. Obviously, this is kind of throughout the entire alt market. Alts are just getting absolutely crushed because we're not in alt season yet, right? I mean, of course, we thought we might be getting into alt season, but of course, with Bitcoin dominance, it's come back up, and it's actually gone higher than it even was before, when we thought Bitcoin dominance could have perhaps topped when it hit that kind of 60% threshold. It's still well above that threshold at this point, and still, it doesn't show any signs of stopping particularly, or possibly, right? I mean, if we continue to see some bullish news for Bitcoin overall, I think we might continue to see that move up, and alts aren't necessarily guaranteed to follow, right? And I think that's important to note, is that while there could be an alt season, and while some of us are kind of basing a lot of our actions off of that's not to say it's going to happen this month or next month, or April, May. It could be December of 2025. It's hard to know for certain. And given what we're seeing right now, I am leaning much toward later in the year. I don't actually think we would see a top prior to the summer, and usually the summer just kind of sucks overall. And so I think kind of the end of the year is a little bit of what we're looking at. Again, this is me just kind of taking a wild guess. I have absolutely no idea, and no way to know for sure, just kind of based on what we're seeing and how we've seen the market move. Kind of honestly moving a little bit slower and generally less violent than what we've seen the crypto move in the past. So that, the crypto market usually is pretty wild, and it's just we haven't really seen too much of that. Again, obviously, down 50% in a month or so is obviously pretty wild, right? But I mean, some of you who were here in 2021 or maybe even 2017, you guys know what I'm talking about when I talk about the wild volatility. And so, I do still think, we're in a pretty good spot. I'm happy with kind of where we're at. I'm very devastated that I wasn't able to get some SUI down at this $2.50 range. I mean, this would have been a fantastic buy. All of these people are very lucky people. Congratulations to them, because this, it would have been an absolute gift to pick up SUI at this price. I would have been very happy with that. But overall, I want to talk a little bit more about kind of, is this an overall concerning thing for SUI? Obviously, we've broken the trend line. It's down 55%. Is it over? Let's go into that a little bit. So first off, I want to start with two things. First one, we know that SUI is going to get, in my opinion, is going to get crushed. I've basically built my entire thesis off of like SUI getting crushed in the bear market, because it's just got such a high lockup. Like there's going to be a whole bunch of liquidity and coins unlocking during the bear market that are realistically probably just going to get sold straight on the market as soon as they unlock. So not really the best thing overall, which is too bad. But I do think, if they continue to grow and if they continue to show some promising results, then they can come back in it in the next bull run, like almost exactly like what we saw out of Solana. And frankly, I'm going to be watching SUI very, very closely for that exact reason. So that's something I'm going to be taking a pretty close look at there. The other thing, though, is we've kind of seen this in the past with similar types of coins, intra-bull cycle. So I want to just kind of focus on completely excluding the bear, like what have we seen inside a bull run. So I want to talk about that. But before we do that, though, I did want to let you know, I do have that link in the description below. Obviously, all the charting and stuff I've been doing has been on BTCC. I am still working with BTCC, and they are giving you that 10% bonus on first-time deposits, which is a really, really good deal. I'm very happy that they are willing to offer this to my audience to help provide some extra value and stuff like that. This is not totally common with a whole bunch of different exchanges, so I am glad that they've done this with me. And they also have that extra bonus of up to $10,055 per user if that is something that you're interested in. Also, no VPN or KYC necessary. Also, again, if that's something that's important to you. So, but now moving on, I want to take a quick look at the Matic chart. So for those of you who don't know, Matic or Polygon launched at the kind of in the middle of last bull run, maybe kind of on the early end, I guess. We could see they came out here, and it's probably going to be blocked by my picture, so I'll move it back. It launched at about, on March, the 11th of March of 2021. So definitely not at the peak bear or peak bull market. So obviously we saw it kind of dance around a little bit. We can see from launch, it went down almost 51%. Before it then saw some really, really nice moves to the upside. Really good, right? I mean, I don't know that there's a whole lot to say here. For some reason, I felt like Polygon was older than this, but at least this is as far back as the chart goes. We can see, from this high, a 51% drop, and then we see a ridiculous move to the upside. And then after we see this ridiculous move to the upside, we see a very short-term drop of 73%. And I'll get rid of these kind of as we go along just so it makes it easier to see. But we can see a very short-term drop of 73% and then almost an immediate move back to a lower high, but still relatively close to previous highs, which in my opinion is pretty crazy. So then after we see this kind of, we see that little bit of a bounce, and then we see this kind of larger pullback to where we get to the bottom here, where if you would have kind of held all the way through from top to bottom, you'd have been down about 78%, almost 80%. Crazy stuff. But then again, we go back to this bottom, which again, is probably about 2x or close to the high when it was launched. So about 50 to 60 cents. It holds here, but then it goes back and gets an even higher high than what we saw here. So, I mean, it is completely reasonable and completely doable for altcoins to fall 50, 60, 70, 80% even in a bull market and then come back and hit new all-time highs. So, the fact that we've seen SUI fall 55%, yeah, of course, it's not ideal, right? But we've already seen that there's very, very strong support for SUI. So even if we look realistically, it really has kind of only fallen and stayed down around the 35 to 40-ish percent range. So, obviously something to take into account here is that there is a pretty good buying base on SUI here who's kind of trying to keep it propped up and keep it with some bullish momentum overall. I think there's a lot of people who are interested. Like I said, if I would have caught this wick, I'd have been super happy with my purchase there. So anyway, all this to say basically that realistically, it could even get worse, right? And it could get worse, and we've seen that happen before. We've seen this show before, so don't get too worried. I'm pretty comfortable with where SUI's at. I think there's a lot of things going on within the SUI ecosystem that are kind of fundamentally bullish. We saw what Polygon did. The reason I use Polygon is just because they kind of feel sort of similar, and also Polygon didn't do the same ridiculous moves that Solana did. If we want to compare SUI to Solana, then obviously the comparison gets even crazier. But I just want to use Matic as kind of a middle of the pack type of reference there. Now, if we look at the DeFi Llama ecosystem for SUI, what we can see, these are kind of the three main stats that I've been consistently tracking here. We'll actually pull these in so we can get a little bit of a better view. But we can see Volume doing pretty well, still not trending up as well as it was when we saw kind of price appreciating. It's kind of flattened out a little bit, which I think is okay, right? I mean, there's more people. I would say, it's a slight downtrend, but people who have kind of onboarded to SUI are staying there, at least from what it looks like generally. We have seen a pretty decent pullback in terms of TVL. I'll actually get rid of stablecoins so we can see it a little bit better. We have seen a decent pullback in terms of TVL. Not the end of the world, though, I would say. Overall, we're still holding a pretty high level compared to especially what we saw, kind of before the beginning of like November, I guess, or end of October. So that's looking pretty good. And then if we pull off TVL and add stablecoins, we can see that the stablecoin TVL or the stablecoin market cap on SUI continues to rise. This is something I've kind of harped on several times over the past little while, is that this is always a really good indicator of where people want to store their money, right? The fact that this is continuing to go up is a generally good thing for SUI. Now, if we go and, not to rain on SUI's parade, but if we were to go and take a look at something like Solana, we can see with stablecoins is a very different picture, right? I mean, we've seen Solana double the stablecoin market cap on their chain in about 2 weeks, which is just freaking ridiculous numbers. And that was part of the reason that I was actually such a heavy buyer for Solana. If you watch my previous video talking about the top 5 altcoins that I did buy during this most recent market crash, is because this is what we're seeing, right? I mean, there's a ton of people moving their money over to Solana that probably you're going to want to spend it somewhere, which means fees for Solana, right? And so, I mean, all of this is really good things to see. We can see, revenue. It's been trending up. Obviously, we saw some ridiculous spikes here and there, but we want to see that continue to trend up. We want to see volume continue to trend up. It's been, again, overall trending up. We had this major spike from like when the Trump coin launched, but we want to continue to see this trend up, a lot of that type of stuff. So that's ultimately kind of what we're looking at within the SUI ecosystem. Things are looking good. Good but not great is kind of what I would say. Obviously, stablecoins, healthy, consistent. TVL down, but like not too far down. Volume holding honestly pretty impressively, holding pretty steady from some of the price depreciation that we've seen, particularly recently on SUI. So I'm very happy with that. Overall, hopefully you did find the information in this video useful, though. I kind of want to just give a kind of how are things looking for SUI? Is it over? One of the reasons that SUI was not one of the major coins that I bought in this recent crash is just because I haven't really established a position on SUI, just because it's been running so hard. And as I've mentioned, I don't buy things when they're running because it just doesn't make any sort of sense. It'll come down like it does. If I would have been able to get in at like that 250-ish range, I would have been super happy about that. Right now, I'm very, very scared. As I've mentioned several times, I'm very, very scared of the bear market on SUI. So I do not want to be getting into SUI and then having to be a bag holder or get dumped on or have to sell at a loss. And I don't have that level of conviction where all the coins that I bought, even if we go into a bear market, obviously not ideal, but I feel comfortable enough going into the bear market, holding them that like, even if they go down, they should do relatively well in future bull markets. Again, that's not my strategy, but if that were to happen, then, it kind of is what it is. So that's kind of why I want to talk about SUI a little bit and kind of gauge where we're at. And so I think if I were to kind of do like the traditional stock analyst, buy, hold, sell type of thing, for me, SUI would be definitely a hold, maybe even like a light buy, if you're a big SUI believer. The only reason I'm marking it as a hold is primarily because of, like I said, the token unlocks going into the bear market and me not being able to be 100% certain that we will see an altcoin season. I'm confident that we will, and I think it's likely, but I'm not certain. And SUI is one that I don't want to really take that risk with. There's a ton of different coins in the crypto market, so you don't really have to force yourself into any particular one if you don't want to. So anyway, like I said, hopefully you found the information in this video useful. If you did, please do give me a like and a subscribe because it really, really does help me out. Also, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, thoughts, feelings, whatever, I'd love to hear from you guys. I'd love to get your guys' take on SUI and how you're viewing it, what you think about it, a lot of that type of stuff. I really do appreciate your commentary. And like I said, I do try to read and respond to all of those. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.